It's in my city, and it's like that.
What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Osh Knows. Shout out to everybody who's liked, comment, subscribed, anything to get my algorithms going lately. My last video, it shot up a few thousand views, like literally overnight. I got a couple hundred subscribers. You know, like I said before, I wasn't really trying to make this a prison genre, and I'm still not. I still tons of stuff to cover, but like anybody who knows, who's been following the channel, I spent a significant amount of my life incarcerated, from juvie to county to rehabs and to penitentiaries. So it's something that I could talk about very easily. Now, that being said, I want to do a video today. I was cruising through YouTube, and I was thinking of people that I was in the joint with, and one dude that always comes to mind is a dude that I knew. We called him Bob. That, you know, and I never called him anything other than Bob. I used to call him Rocket Bob, actually. I'm lying. He used to try to foot race everybody on the yard. And when you see this video, it's going to be kind of funny that now that I said that to you, you'll see why. So anyway, a lot of people behind his back called him Boxcar Bob. Apparently he was called Sidetrack, where he was from. And so I YouTubed him, and I've watched the documentary before, but this one's a little bit different. So I wanted to watch this one. It's shorter, so it'd be easier to review. But like I said, I know this man. I did a lot of time with him. Actually, he was my neighbor when I first got to Rawlins, when I first started doing prison time. He was 2 cells away from me. And then in Torrington, we did a few years together before I got paroled. And when I got paroled, he was actually the very first person I seen walking down the hallway. And we had established a relationship and a friendship over these years. And I'll get a little bit into more of that, more into that later. But Bob was the first person I seen walking back from the parole board. And Bob was very soft-spoken. And the first thing he says is, did you get any action? And I'm like, yeah, bro, they paroled me to my Colorado number, because I was in trouble in Colorado too, so I had to get paroled, extradited, blah, blah, blah. But I'm telling Bob this. And like I said, I had done my whole prison number pretty much right next to Bob. And so, you know, and he was happy for me. What I felt was genuine happiness. He hugged me, picked me up. You know, Bob was happy for me. So anyway, that being said, I would like to say this also. Now, we're going to cover something that's a little bit sensitive to some people, and reasonably so, because this man was found guilty of 30-plus murders and is suspected of 40-something murders. And he did this all across the United States. And so, without further ado, we'll get into this.
Welcome to Robert Joseph Silveria Jr., the enigmatic boxcar killer. John Dignan had fallen on hard times, homeless and struggling to survive.
And this John Dignan that they're talking about, that's a victim, a murder victim, and that's who they decide to start with in this documentary to highlight with.
Found shelter in the abandoned boxcars that dotted the train yards of the American West. Dignan, like many others in his situation, was invisible to society, living on the fringes and largely forgotten. It was in one of these boxcars that John Dignan unknowingly crossed paths with Robert Joseph Silveria Jr., a man...
And if you're in the joint with Bob, everybody's heard the stories, you know what I mean? Bob never talked about it. I didn't ask him. I don't know of anybody who did. Somebody might have after all these years, you know what I mean? He's been down for a really long time. But anyways, yeah, so he supposedly killed a lot of people. So that's where this takes place at, is in these train boxcars.
Would become his merciless killer. Silveria, a drifter himself, was no stranger to the transient life of the railways. However, beneath his seemingly unassuming exterior lurked a violent and predatory nature.
And look at that right there. That's without the mustache. I never did time with Bob while he had a mustache, but that's Bob right there. All the faces of Bob right there. That's him for sure. The guy up in the corner with the smile, to the guy with the straight face, you know what I mean? And Bob, that's how he always grew out his hair. Always grew it out, slicked it back. But yeah, that's the guy. Anybody who's done time in Wyoming, You know, pretty much everybody's heard of him, and a lot of us actually have met him, and, you know, a select number of us have actually gotten close with and call Bob our friend.
Desolate night, as Dignan sought refuge from the harsh elements, he encountered Silveria in the dimly lit boxcar. At first, Silveria may have appeared to be just another fellow traveler seeking shelter from the cold. However, it didn't take long for the encounter to turn sinister. Without warning, Silveria launched a brutal attack on the defenseless Dignan. His victim had no chance to escape or fight back.
And here's another thing. Bob is a really big guy. I'm just going to like give rough estimate. I'm going to say he's probably like 6'3", 6'2", 6'3", probably a natural build of probably about, I don't know, 250, you know, so that's not a small guy at all. Like that's, you know, he's got 100 pounds and, you know, 6 inches on me easy. So
Silveria's violence escalated, and he mercilessly beat Dignan to death within the confines of the boxcar, leaving behind a gruesome scene. After ending Dignan's life, Silveria callously left the lifeless body in the boxcar, abandoned like countless others before him. The murder was just one in a series of heinous acts committed by Silveria as he traveled the rails, preying on the vulnerable. Silveria's reign of terror continued as he moved from town to town, targeting.
And like I said, he did this all across the country. He was originally from California, and I know that a lot of what he was convicted of was all up the West Coast, Washington, Oregon, I do believe, Montana, Wyoming, Nebraska, and I could be mistaken. There's a different documentary, but I do believe they said he made it all the way down to Florida on the railroads, killing people all the way across the country.
Those who lived on the margins of society. His victims, often homeless or transient individuals, were easy prey for a killer who operated in the shadows, leaving little evidence in his wake. It wasn't until 1996 that Robert Joseph Silveria Jr.'s rampage came to an end. He was apprehended by law enforcement, finally putting an end to the terror he had unleashed on the railways. Silveria was subsequently convicted of multiple murders, including the brutal killing of John Dignan.
So I think that part of his plea deal was that he was fighting for was to not get the death penalty in certain states. So he'd plead guilty and let them know where the bodies were, what murders he did and remembered, and where he left the bodies and all that stuff. For that information, they agreed to let him serve his time in Wyoming, which is pretty cake, pretty laid back time compared to most states, and not get the death penalty.
Joseph Silveria Jr., infamously known as the Boxcar Killer, was a serial killer who terrorized the railways of the United States during the 1990s. His life was marked by a disturbing descent into violence and murder. Robert Joseph Silveria Jr. was born on July 21, 1962, in San Jose, California, USA. His early life appeared relatively ordinary, but signs of trouble began to emerge as he entered adolescence. Silveria struggled with personal issues, including substance abuse and brushes with the law.
And now that's how a lot of people who end up in the prison system got a similar story to that. I mean, minus all the crazy killing and stuff like that, is that, you know, we grew up, you know, in a certain type of environment. You know, parents were a certain way. One parent was there, one parent wasn't in some cases, you know, and so in those instances, a lot of the time the parent wasn't really able to properly guide those individuals, and so through not being taught right, you're just left to your own devices. You get to teach yourself, you know what I mean? And so it says here that Bob, you know, was left to his own devices. He did drugs and alcohol, and that adds up to a whole lot of other things if you got things going on up here, you know what I mean?
His criminal record started with minor offenses, but soon escalated to more serious crimes. His transient lifestyle, drifting along the railways and hopping freight trains, provided him with anonymity and access to vulnerable targets. Silveria's killing spree began during the early 1990s as he traveled the rails across the United States. His victims were often homeless or transient individuals living on the fringes of society. He would approach them under the pretense of camaraderie before launching brutal and fatal attacks.
Now, that was one thing, too, that everybody was always worried about Bob with in the joint was, I was talking to this old dude that was a cellie, and he said they got moved in together as the first night they were staying together, and he'd heard all the stories, you know what I mean? And he had heard one of the urban myths, urban legends that he had heard about Bob was that he was killing people for their shoes. So, this old man was telling me that that night they went in and, you know, he was kind of standoffish, you know, but apprehensive, not like he was trying to get at Bob, but that he was apprehensive of Bob. But he said first thing he said when they closed the door, locked down at night. And when you're in there at night, you're in there from 9 at night till 6:30 in the morning, whenever they open the doors in the morning. You know what I mean? So that's a pretty big gap to be in there with this dude. But he said the first thing that Bob told him was, nice shoes. So he said he didn't sleep at all that whole night.
Beating or strangling them to death. Modus operandi. Silveria's modus operandi was characterized by extreme violence and a lack of a clear pattern. His victims were chosen seemingly at random, making it challenging for law enforcement to establish a clear link between the crimes. The authorities launched an extensive manhunt for the boxcar killer, recognizing the pattern of violence that stretched across state lines. Silveria managed to evade capture for several years, perpetuating a reign of terror. It wasn't until 1996 that Silveria was finally apprehended. His capture was the result of diligent police work and the cooperation of law enforcement agencies across multiple jurisdictions.
So now, in the other documentary I watched, it said that they had been looking for him for a long time in a couple different police departments across the country, you know, seeing similarities in these, so they got in contact with each other and started putting it together. And to my recollection, pretty sure that it said when they finally caught up to him and arrested him, because they had, you know, met other transient people on the railways and questioned them, and they had kept hearing about Bob. And when they finally caught him, to my understanding, he was just like, yeah, it was me, you know, and told him everything. So, you know, maybe he was over that life, or, you know, maybe, you know, because if you ever met him, he was very docile on the outside. So maybe he was just looking for a way out of that life, and he didn't know how to do it. And he's got a couple screws loose, and this was what happened.
Following his capture, Robert Joseph Silveria Jr. was convicted of multiple counts of murder, including the brutal killing of John Dignan. He received a life sentence in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that he would never again threaten the lives of the vulnerable. Robert Joseph Silveria Jr., the boxcar killer, had several disturbing and intriguing facts associated with his life and crimes. Silveria's transient lifestyle, hopping freight trains and traveling across state lines, allowed him to evade law enforcement and operate in different regions, making it challenging for authorities to track him. Silveria managed to evade capture for several years, committing a series of murders without leaving a clear pattern for investigators to follow. His ability to remain at large added to the difficulty of apprehending him. Silveria's victims were primarily homeless or transient individuals living on the fringes of society.
So we're going to wrap it up right there. I just wanted to give you guys a little taste of, you know, somebody that I met, somebody a lot of people in Wyoming's prison system know about and have met, somebody that we've all seen. And like I said, this is one thing. Bob, he used to always try to foot race everybody. I swear to God, this guy, and like I said, he's a big dude. You know what I mean? But he worked out every day, and he used to try to foot race everybody. So I used to call him Rocket Bob. And he was also, another fun fact, during my stay there, he was the only, you know, call it what it is. He was the only white guy that the natives allowed to sweat with us. And I feel it was because the way he conducted himself, very respectful, his genuine feelings for the culture and heritage of Native people. He wasn't out of place at all while he was there. You know what I mean? Like, And that's what it is. So, like I said, I knew Bob very well. Bob is an amazing artist. He could draw like amazing. It was the first thing I didn't know about Bob. The first time I ever seen him, I seen him drawing. And like I said, he lived 2 doors down from me. He had a table set up in front of his house and he was drawing right there. And I was like, man, that's amazing. He's like, yeah. And that's the first time interaction I ever had with Bob. And it was like a day in, 2 days in on the block. So all the way up until I got paroled, like I said, I'm walking down the hallway. There's Bob walking straight at me, picks me up, hugs me. So did a lot of time with the dude. I just thought that was something that would be interesting to all my viewers, all my new subscribers. These are guys that we got floating around our Wyoming prison system, you know, and like I said, he was originally from San Jose, California. So he had murdered up to supposedly like 42 people, but was convicted of like 30 something, I think high 30s. I can't remember the exact number. But anyways, that's Bob, aka Sidetrack, aka the Boxcar Killer, aka Boxcar Bob. I used to call him Rocket Bob. That was my dog. Yeah, I had a lot of love for the dude, you know, because I did a lot of time with him. So there's that episode. I hope you guys liked it. Like, comment, subscribe. Drop some links of stuff you want me to review, or, you know, comment something you want me to review, you know, questions. There's a lot of comments and other stuff that gave me ideas of stuff I'm going to cover in the upcoming episodes. So thank you to everybody. Another one down. Osh, out.